Good morning, good morning, good morning. It is Thursday, the 2nd of October, 2025. I'm Graham. Oh no, hang on. That's the wrong thing to press. Hang on, I've got a thing here now. Oh, great, that still works. Oh no, it doesn't. Oh, it kind of does. I'm very sorry for getting on so late this morning. But what you find when you're home, finally, after a month away, everything wants to update. Windows wants to update. OBS wants to update. Oh, and YouTube won't let you in because it's like, but you were in Canada the other day. What are you doing logging in from the UK? I need to have your verification. I need to have your identification. And I'm like, okay, nice. So I'm being verified. I've been updated. Finally, I'm here. I'm back in good old freezing cold Durham. So I've got my hoodie back on. Welcome to the show. Thank you for sticking with us, those that did, over the last month of absolute insanity. I started with me going to the Toronto International Film Festival in Canada, and then on to Panama, onto my island in Panama, the Ginger Island, and then back to Toronto, and then straight to the Labour Party conference, where I mucked about. And I just got in yesterday evening, about 6 o'clock, and I was like, oof. Anyway, I'm back now, and that's what matters, I like to think. So yeah, I'm back with Brock the Badger, and I'm back with, animated backgrounds. Again, not had the animated backgrounds for a while, because my processor couldn't process them. Anyway, but I'm here now, and that's the important thing. Today, we are going to talk about the Boris Wave and the Farage Boats. And I've got a few things to say about this. And this is something that's really interesting because it's kind of come up now as a battle cry from various angles. And the weird thing is, it's like the refuckers are talking about the Boris Wave. They're talking about this wave of immigration that we've had since Boris Johnson became Prime Minister in 2019. Now, and then we've got Labour calling the boats coming over the Farage Boats, right? I think they should just be the Brexit Wave and the Brexit Boats. I mean, you could call it the Boris Brexit Wave and the Farage Brexit Boats, just to be completely on board with it. But let's get into it. Let's get into what this all means. So both terms have exploded onto the mainstream over the last few weeks, each with different origins. As I just said, the Boris Wave came from far-right online sources, and it's been laundered into the media, as these things are, and it's now being used uncritically by MPs in refuck, and also by journalists. Farage Boats is Starmer's new rhetorical jab, and he's shifting responsibility for channel crossings directly onto Farage. And both are really euphemisms, I should say, but both are really euphemisms for the same phenomenon. The consequences of Brexit. The consequences of Brexit that we told you would happen. But before we get into that, we have had a super chat in from Francis Winrow. Woo! Let's see if my super chat button works. No. Yes. No. Yes. Yeah, it works. Woohoo! Everything's going to be a bit like just getting up to speed. Do you know what I mean? You got to turn the crank to get it working. Go on. Animation. Oh, brilliant. Francis Winrow, I haven't in a while. Oh, thank you so much, Francis. That is very kind of you. Daylight Dave, who's been a member for 6 months, says, welcome back. And Saz says, glad to be in this lovely community. Oh, I'm glad you're here as well. Thank you, Saz, for joining us this fair morning. So, yeah, my argument is like this is all about Brexit, and that's probably what we should be pointing out, that the Farage Brexit is a disaster, because Farage, his greatest achievement in life so far is Brexit. And so the more people who realise that Brexit is shit, and looking at the polls, only 11%, in the latest poll, only 11% of people said that Brexit was going well. So hang it round his neck. Hang it round his neck like a concrete albatross. Do it. Everyone who hates Farage, go on and on about the damage that Brexit has done. Financially, economically, sociologically, in terms of the way that we're just not at the table anymore. But also the damage it's done to the fabric of our society is probably kind of beyond measure. And we need to make sure that people know that if he got ever got a whiff of power, it would be that, but 100 times worse. Because the guy hasn't got a fucking clue. He's a fucking idiot. And people only think that he knows what he's talking about because he's posh. And they think he's the posh mate who'll buy a round of drinks, right? I know some posh people who are all right. But I also know a lot of rich people who wouldn't piss on you if you're on fire because, you know, they're tight as fuck. They swallow a lump of coal, a shit out of diamonds. And that's the reason why they're so rich. They don't spend any bloody money. Just hoard it all like Smaug. 22 months, says Yuri in Infected of. Keep up the good work, Graham. Thank you, Yuri, for being a member for 22 months. And Chris C says, welcome back. My routine is back to normal. Woo! Yeah, sorry for 1 month of disruption. It was just, you know, I couldn't really do a 9 o'clock show while I was in Panama because I would have had to do it at 3 o'clock in the morning. Could you imagine? But yes, I hope today's better today, Pete. Also, Pete's had some bad news there. Sorry, mate, getting me scheduled, having to go to another appointment. Sorry to hear that, Pete. That really sucks. But I hope you feel better soon. Okay, mate. Sending love and hugs. All that jazz. Okay, so the entire conversation about migration in Britain is being distorted by the language that we use. The far right invents terms like Boris Wave to frame migration as a hostile invasion and blame it on Boris Johnson, when actually it's neither of those things really. Well, I suppose you can blame it on Boris Johnson because he did support Brexit, but he's not in the political picture at the moment. This is why I think we should be calling it the Farage Wave or the Brexit Farage Wave. Because he's the enemy now. He's the target. He's the guy we have to go after. It's not leave Boris Johnson alone for the moment. I mean, you know, I don't really want to because he's a scumbag. But for the moment, and yes, I will get on to Michelle Moan and all that kind of stuff that's happened later on in the show when we do the paper review, because obviously they go hard. Well, at least the Mirror does. So anyway, Starmer's calling these dinghies Farage Boats, but neither side is being completely honest about the underlying cause, and it's Brexit. It's as simple as that. By adopting these phrases, politicians they risk sort of entrenching with the Boris Wave in particular this far right framing that we need to, that I think we need to cut through. I think that's why we should be using the term Brexit Wave and Brexit Boats, because Brexit will inextricably be linked to Farage anyway. The damage done by Brexit, the damage done by Farage's Brexit. And so what is the Boris Wave? It's a spike in non-EU migration after Brexit. This term was first seen in June last year on far-right accounts. It's spread to 4chan and onto fringe online publications, but it's then been picked up since by The Telegraph, by the Daily Mail. And it hides the structural causes, you know, the Boris Johnson's post-Brexit visa policies. Everyone who came here as part of the Boris Wave came here on a visa, pretty much. There was only a tiny, tiny minority who came on a small boat. The vast majority of people who are here in this country were invited into this country by a dint of them applying for a visa and then being granted a visa by the government. If the government doesn't want immigrants, it can just simply stop issuing visas. It's as simple as that. Because no one in their right mind is going to... No IT consultant in their right mind is going to trek all the way over from India to cross the channel in a boat to get a job in Croydon. It doesn't happen. You know? I mean, people might be escaping war. They might be escaping persecution and do that, but not to get a job, not in IT. You know? But loads of people working in IT who have come from, Africa, from the Indian subcontinent. They've been invited by the British government to replace the EU workers that they've told to fuck off. It is all Brexit. It is all Brexit. And, the structural causes here are the visa policies of the government, the trade deals that we've enacted, and labour shortages caused by Brexit. Brexit. We wouldn't need trade deals if we were still in the biggest and most successful trading union in the history of humanity. You know, and this also it sort of turns policy outcome into a blame game against migrants, which I really hate. I hate the fact that people have a problem with people coming over here from other countries. It's a bit cheeky considering we are British and that's what we did to everyone else for many, many, many Centuries. I was going to say years, I was going to say decades, but no, many centuries. That's what Britain did. Just turned up in other people's countries and started dicking around. Now, the reality is that the majority of immigrants coming to this country actually are a net benefit to the economy. They are a net benefit to the Chancellor and the Exchequer. That's the same person, isn't it? It's the Chancellor of the Exchequer. They're a net benefit to the public funds because they give in more money, they spend more money. They give more money, they pay more money in tax, and they take out the system, generally speaking. And that goes for migrants from anywhere, generally speaking. But when it was migrants from the EU, they were far and above more likely to just have a few years here as like working age, 20s, 30s, into their 40s, and then they'll go home. They'll go back to Spain or Portugal or Greece or Romania, or wherever they were born, because that's where their family is, that's where their friends are, that's where the language that they speak. And so we didn't have to pay for their education when they were kids, and we didn't have to pay for their pension when they were pensioners. And plus, loads of people had no recourse to public funds. That's what my partner at the time, when she moved here in 2003 from Australia, she had a stamp, a sticker in her passport, and it said no recourse to public funds. And now they have the NHS surcharge on top of that, so you have to pay money in order to use the NHS. What's the problem? What's the problem apart from racism? That's the problem. You're in fact enough. Thank you very much for the £5 super chat, my friend. I thought the Boris effect was what Carrie experiences once a month when she wakes up covered in Moe and Yeti jizz. Oh, God. Oh, Jesus. Let me out a drink. Jesus. Yuri, thank you. I mean, I don't mean thank you. I mean, oh, my God. That's a mental image I didn't need this time of the morning, mate. That is seriously. Oh, Jesus. Oh, listen, you're gonna have to wait there. I'm gonna have to go take a bath. All right, I'll be back in about half an hour. Anyway, I'll never be clean again. Ugh. Anyway, thank you very much for the super chat, though. Thanks for the money. Anyway, so yeah, where was I? Farage Boats. Right, so at the Labour conference, Starmer started talking about Farage Boats, and his argument is that Farage sold Brexit as harmless, but leaving the EU asylum agreement, such as the Dublin agreement, directly led to these small boat crossings, which they absolutely have. Now, we didn't need to leave. This is the thing. We didn't need to leave the Dublin agreement. That was a decision taken by the Tory government at the time when they decided to get Brexit done, and they wanted us out of Schengen. We went part of Schengen. They wanted us out of the Eurozone. We went part of the Eurozone. They wanted us out of Horizon. They wanted us out of Erasmus. They wanted us out of the Interrail system. They wanted us out of everything to do with Europe, including the Dublin Agreement, which countries that are not part of Europe, like Switzerland and Liechtenstein and Iceland and Norway, are still part of the Dublin Agreement, because it stops what they call asylum shopping, or I think that's the word. That's where you go from one country to the next asking for asylum, and you get turned down, and you go to the next country. And the sort of the numbers are just absolutely staggering on these boats, right? So in 2016 there were no boats. In 2017 there was like two. From 2018 to 2020, just pre-Brexit, but after we'd moved in that direction, there was about 10,600 arrivals, right? Post-Brexit, there's been 160,000 arrivals on small boats since we left the EU. And, without Dublin returns and Eurodac fingerprint checks, the UK has become more attractive for irregular crossings, because the Tories talked about a deterrent, didn't they? They love talking about a deterrent. There's got to be this deterrent. What's the deterrent? We've got to send you off to Rwanda. Didn't deter anyone. We're going to send 1% of you off to Rwanda, maybe. I didn't deter a single person. What deterred people was the fact that they'd already applied for asylum in another EU country. We had their fingerprints on record, and if they came over here on a small boat, we could just take them straight back to the country in which they first applied for asylum. It wouldn't necessarily be France. It could be any of the countries of the EU in which they first applied for asylum. We could send them back there. That was the Dublin Agreement. And, Starmer is right in the sense that Farage lied, that Brexit wouldn't affect migration control. He was wrong. He said that Brexit would shore up our borders. That did not happen. That absolutely didn't happen. But There is a difficulty here because they still put the blame a bit on the boats rather than the broken system that Farage and Trump and Boris Johnson and all those right-wing gobshites, Vladimir Putin and the Mohammed bin Salman in Saudi Arabia, the world in which they want to create, which is that no one is allowed to say anything unless they like the sound of it. You're not allowed to make jokes about the people in charge, or they'll or criticize them anyway, or they'll cut you up with a fucking bone saw. By the way, did anyone notice that Trump has given NATO-like assurances to Qatar? Do you notice that? Qatar. Why do people go on and on about, like, these people coming from the Middle East who are Muslim, they don't share our values? And it's like, okay, right. So I'm assuming that when people come here to the UK, they tend to adopt some of our values, and that's the vast majority of people who do come here do that. Otherwise, it would be death and carnage all over the roads, wouldn't it? I assume, on every street in the land. I just assume that would be the case, and it's not. But this thing of like, they don't share our values, and you go over to Saudi Arabia where they still hang people for being gay. They still treat women like absolute shit. Like a woman's testimony is only worth half of that of a man's. In a court of law in Saudi Arabia. Women until very recently weren't allowed to drive. And apparently they share our values now when money's involved. The value of money. Value of money. The Brexit Boats and the Brexit Wave, I think that's what we should be calling it. I think that we should be talking more about the failures of Brexit and how everything that Farage promised Brexit would deliver has actually been the diametric opposite of that. We have more people coming in small boats than ever before. We have more people coming into the country because we need them. We need them here. And when people could move around the EU easily, that people didn't necessarily stay and didn't necessarily need to bring their families over. They weren't coming from a developing nation to an advanced economy, and that's a huge leap. And are you gonna go? Are you gonna want to go back? Seriously. I mean, I like Bangladesh. I like Nigeria. I do. I like Ghana. But like, given the choice for me, and I understand. But also, one of the problems we're creating problems for those countries because we are creating a brain drain. We're talking about countries that haven't got much money, right? These are countries that are developing, and they don't really have the same sort of education system that we do. And their brightest and best are being poached away by the UK. So they're if you think about it, like if a kid gets state education and then goes to university in Bangladesh or in Nigeria and betters themselves and becomes a doctor or becomes a nurse or becomes a teacher or an accountant or an architect, and then they've had all that training in their country, whether they paid fees or not, it doesn't matter. They had all that training in their country. But then their expertise, all of that, years of training gets used in the UK. It gets taken from their country and comes over to here, which I think is a bit unfair, especially when there's 500 million people living in Europe who can just come here for a bit and then go over there and then go over. And it'd be the same as someone who worked in London for a bit and then worked in Manchester and then worked in Glasgow and then worked in Dublin. Like, it wouldn't make much of a difference to the whole, setup of our country educates people and their country educates people. And we're all advanced economies around here. So you don't have the same kind of brain drain that they're facing in West Africa, that they're facing in the Indian subcontinent because of us poaching their brightest and best IT engineers, and people go, we should be training our own, but that takes years, it takes 20 fucking years. We have 20 years to wait. We need people now. But we pulled out the EU. We pulled out the EU and immigration's gone through the roof as a result, because people aren't just coming here for a little bit and then fucking off. They're coming here to stay. And now Nigel Farage is freaking out about that and saying, we need to have end indefinite leave to remain, which is just an absolutely inhumane policy, a racist policy from the racist fuckers at Refuck. Yeah, and so, So both of these phenomenons, the boats and the wave, are Brexit outcomes, And don't forget, Boris Johnson's government opened schemes for people coming from Hong Kong, people coming from Ukraine, people coming from India, and the fact that the EU returns agreement collapsed, it means that asylum seekers have no legal pathway to claim asylum in this country unless they set foot on terra firma in this country. They can't do it unless they're from Hong Kong, unless they're from Ukraine. If they're from Eritrea or they're from Yemen, they can't claim asylum here unless they get in a little boat and come over, or get on the back of a truck and try and get through the Channel Tunnel, which is not easy these days. But it's just both these two terms that they describe different migration categories, which is really important to remember because people like to lump it together, like people like to lump the era of slavery together with the era of empire. They were two separate but connected. Separate but connected phenomenons, eras, I should say, eras. Like Taylor Swift. There's two different migration categories. Okay, so you've got your legal migration, which is caused by our government asking for people to come from other countries and granting them visas. If the government stopped granting so many visas, not so many people will come. Okay, and then the separate issue of people coming across in small boats, which I do think is an issue because I don't want anyone coming over here in small boats. As you well know, I think there should be a processing centre set up in Calais, and we need a returns agreement. We need to let's sign up to the Dublin Agreement again. Why not? What's stopping us? Like I said before, Liechtenstein's a member of the Dublin Agreement, or participants in the Dublin Agreement, a signatory. Maybe the word signatory, a signatory to the Dublin Agreement. Fucking join it again. Join it again. Simple as that. That's what Labour should do. They could stop the boats tomorrow. They'll stop the boats tomorrow. And then they could brag that they stopped the Farage boats. This is something that they need to do. I do worry that people... it's interesting, isn't it, that the people on the far right are calling it the Johnson Wave or the Boris Wave, because they don't want to admit the reality, which is that their Brexit that they championed has ended up exploding in their face. They've been hoisted by their own petard. But it's interesting, isn't it? Like the way that these terms can take on a whole new life for themselves. And I think this is something that the right have done very well over many years, is the way they frame stuff. And the left hasn't been so good at it. So I was quite glad that Starmer used the term Farage Boats, even though I was going, well, maybe you should call them Brexit Boats. But I understand why that might be politically difficult for him, but lump the blame on Nigel Farage. But we all know that the underlying cause is it's Brexit. It's just Brexit. I mean, we've always had high migration in this country, since the 1948, I think, Windrush, the Windrush came, the SS Windrush for the first time from the West Indies. And then we had Commonwealth immigration in the 60s and 70s. Don't forget, until 1973, if you were born anywhere in the Commonwealth, you could come here. Just like, the freedom of movement that we had with the EU. We used to have that with the Commonwealth. That's why people like Gina Miller could come over from Guyana in South America. She could come over here as before 1973, and on her passport, and become a British citizen quite easily compared to today. And then we had the European free movement, which supplied key labour. And that sort of ramped up. I mean, it really started in 1992, but that really ramped up after the expansion of the EU in 2004, when about 10 new countries joined the European Union, increasing the size of the union by over a third. That supplied key labour in key areas, and plumbers, electricians, builders came over, and we got a lot of shit done. We GSD'd, we got shit done. But that all came to a calamitous fucking crash to the ground as soon as the Tories got in 2010 and their fucking austerity, and then they made a bad situation worse with their fucking Brexit, and then they made a bad situation worse with their fucking response to COVID, and then we had the Liz Truss mini budget, which means that our embattled Chancellor of the Exchequer, Rachel Reeves, is terrified to even hint at tax rises or more money to be given to people who deserve it, because She doesn't want to spook the fucking markets because of what Liz Truss did. So frustrating. But yeah, the way that politicians have sort of scapegoated migration all the way through this, right? So, the racism that people faced in the 60s and 70s, and then, the politicians ended legal managed migration from the EU. They created shortages in healthcare, in hospitality, in agriculture. And the government has filled those gaps with non-EU visas, which is the Boris Wave, which is the Brexit Wave. And they've closed EU asylum routes, which has led to the Farage Boats. So the politicians are now whinging about the very systems that they broke. Who caused all this damage? Who broke this system? Who could it have been? It was you, Nigel. It was you, Nigel, you twat. Anyway, someone who's not a twat is B, because B has just dropped in £10. Thank you so much, B. That's very kind of you. I'm very stressed about all this. Don't have much to say because I'm overwhelmed, but thank you for all the coverage and talk. Oh, thank you very much, B. Look, I think that the tide will turn against Farage because the establishment don't like him. I know he is the establishment, but he's twatty establishment. The establishment, they don't like drawing attention to themselves. Do you know the way they are? Like the way that Boris Johnson is and Dominic Cummings. These are very, very posh boys. Dominic Cummings, the man of the people who lives in a castle, went to private school and just his parents own a 27 fucking acre estate just outside the city centre here in Durham. But, he's a man of the people, really. He's got to get out of London. He's got to get away from the metropolitan elites. Yeah, Dominic, tell us about the elite. So the thing is, the neo-aristocracy, which these people represent, they're very cagey about it being pointed out that they're posh. Whereas Nigel Farage, as much as he pretends to be a man of the people, he is the guy who went on and on about the fact that he wasn't allowed to have a Hughes bank account. So yeah, I'm really hoping that the tide will turn. I'm hoping that this is going to be the high watermark right now for Refuck, and then that's going to ebb away as they face more criticism coming from Labour, finally turning their guns on Refuck, but also from the Conservatives. The Conservatives need to get their finger out on this, because the last few things that I've seen Kemi Badenoch blabble on about, she's been having a go at Labour. They're not the threat. Kemi, Joe's the threat right now. Nigel Farage, have a go at Farage. So by doing that, and the fact that the Tories are all in bed with the Fleet Street gutter press, then there is a good chance that the Fleet Street gutter press could jump on and demolish Farage if they really wanted to. What happened to the pilot? What happened to the pilot of that plane that crashed, Farage? Why does no one ever ask him about the pilot of the plane that crashed? The guy who couldn't work because he had crashed the plane, and while the investigation was ongoing, he wasn't allowed to operate his business, and he fell into depression, and he clearly needed mental health support, which was not delivered to him by the guy who was in the plane with him, the guy whose life he saved by successfully crash landing the plane in such a way that it didn't end up in the death of Nigel Farage. And Farage responds to this guy who saved his fucking life by, this guy who's suffering from obviously shock, PTSD, and also not being able to work. Nigel Farage, multi-millionaire, Coots bank account holder, couldn't spare 200 quid to pay for a therapist for this guy to get some help. Couldn't spare a business bridging loan just while he got himself back on his feet. Couldn't spare that. And the guy took his own life. No one asks Farage about that, and we fucking should. Everyone should ask him. What happened to the pilot? Why didn't you help him out? Oh, he was really horrible to him. He said mean things. Yeah, because he was clearly suffering from PTSD, and his business was fucked. You could have helped him, but you chose not to. Yeah, you were quite happy to take £1 million a year from the EU and spend it on. He had his wife and his mistress employed by the EU. We helped pay their fucking wages when he was on the EU gravy train that he riled against. Anyway, Paula, thank you very much for the £5 super chat. And then we got the superb piece of logic. They come over here and take our jobs and live off social security, which is totally contradictory. Yes, Paula, Schrodinger's immigrants. They're taking our jobs. Okay. Did they take your job? No, but I'm sure they're taking someone's job. Okay, they're taking our dole money. They can't do that. I had an argument on the phone once. This is when I was applying for carers allowance to look after my dad when I first got back to the UK in 2017, and they kept me waiting for 6 months. And then I got a phone call saying, no, we're not going to get your carers allowance, which was like £58 a week or something. It was fuck all, right? It wasn't enough to live on. I don't know, maybe I could go and buy a pint of lager in London or something, treat myself, buy myself something nice, pat on the head. Anyway, so I was applying for this £58 a week or whatever the fuck it was. And I was told I couldn't have it because I'd spent too much time out of the country before I came back, even though my tax had always been paid in this country. I had not been earning money abroad and then scribbling it away in foreign bank accounts. I had been earning it, I'd been earning money wherever I was in the world, including this country, and it had gone straight into my business account, and I had been paying tax on that. Presumably, and just the fact that that I wasn't allowed to get that, but I was applying for my carers allowance, and I'm on the phone to this guy who's explaining to me why I can't get my carers allowance, and he said it's all these migrants coming over from the EU and taking claim and stuff, and I said no, I've got to stop you there. Seem to know a bit more than the person at fucking HMRC or whatever the fuck it was I was talking to. I was like, that's not true. That if anyone from the EU claims any kind of assistance here, it's paid by their government. They get the government has to pay off. There's 5,000 people from Poland who are all claiming money off our government here in the UK. This is before Brexit. That money would have to be paid by the Polish government to our government. It was all paid off. That was the deal, And if you were coming from the EU, you needed to work. You needed to have, money to support yourself. And if you didn't, you could be deported. And this is one of the famous things that never ever happened under the Tories when they were whinging about people coming over from Europe and working here. Them saying, we can't deport them. We fucking could. In fact, Belgium deported quite a few people back to other countries in the EU who weren't fucking working. They found people who were living on the streets or whatever in their country, and they weren't from Belgium or they weren't from Holland, Netherlands, and they would send them back to the original country of the EU. It was perfectly legal. It was part of the European Union legal framework that we were part of, because the people running the EU aren't all fucking, Mr. Woke, bleeding heart liberals. There's a lot of people in the EU who are just as right-wing and don't like people from other countries as anyone else, but they look at it pragmatically, and they're like, well, we need labour, we need people to work. The more movement we have of services and of goods and of people, the more money we make. Simple as that. Austerity doesn't work. If everyone stays in their village and stuffs their filthy mattress with used £5 notes, you're never gonna progress your economy. You need people moving. You need money moving. You need people buying stuff, possibly that they don't need, but you need them buying stuff. You need that money circulating around the system. You need money to make money. Simple as that. So and then there's also an issue here which I want to mention, which is why is there just so much? Why are the people coming over, and why are there so many refugees coming into Europe at the moment? And there has been a spike in refugees, and it's as simple as this: it's because of wars, and nearly all wars in the world right now have Russia somewhere involved in it. Vladimir Putin, he is very happy to cause civil disruption across 26 different countries in Africa through his Wagner group, who don't know what they're calling themselves now that he's killed his best mate. He shot him out of the sky in a plane. But, because he's a fucking terrorist, because he's a fucking gangster. Okay. What I'm thinking is, maybe this guy is causing this civil disruption, causing these military incursions and military coup d'etats. Maybe he's causing them to create refugees. Because I'll tell you this, refugees aren't going to go to fucking Russia. Russia's a fucking shithole. Why would anyone want to go to Russia? I'll go from this oppressive state where there's no food and everyone has to eat fucking cold potatoes every day, raw potatoes every day. I'll go from there to Russia. Oh, hang on. Why have I only got this raw potato to eat? And why is that other person driving a gold-plated fucking Audi and lives in a palace? What's going on here? Paula, thank you very much for the £5 super chat. Graham, that sounds like the notorious habitual resident rules, which I think should apply to the rich who live abroad to make them pay their UK taxes. Yes, I think it should. That's the thing with America. The reason why Boris Johnson gave up his American citizenship, because he was born in America and therefore he had an automatic right to it, was the fact that if you are an American citizen, you have to pay tax. No matter where you are in the world or what you're doing, you're an American citizen, you have to pay tax in America on your earnings, something that Britain just doesn't do. And then, yeah, we need to... The greatest lie ever told is Brexit. Brexit was told to people that it would make their lives better. It didn't. It would make access to medicine, medical services easier. It didn't. It would reduce class sizes. It hasn't. They were told that it would bring more money in, more investments. I remember having an argument with a friend in the pub about Brexit, and he was trying to explain to me that Europe only represents a small amount of the world's worth, the world's GDP, and we've got all these other countries that we can trade with, which bores my piss, because I'm like, look, I've been to all these other countries, and most of them, unfortunately, have got fuck all. You can say, well, there's only 44 countries in Europe, and there's 193 countries in the world, and plus Vatican City and Palestine and Taiwan and Western Sahara, etc. So it's only a quarter. It's less than a quarter of the world. It's not. When you look at it economically, it's a lot more than that. There are only, according to the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, there's only 30 or so advanced economies in the world, and nearly all of them are in Europe. Nearly all of them are in Europe. Advanced economies. There's America and Canada and Australia and New Zealand and Singapore and Israel and South Korea and Taiwan and that's about it for the rest of the world. There's about 3 times more advanced economies in Europe than there is out there. So it was a lie that we could go out there and get these amazing trade deals. The trade deals that we've got, I mean, the trade deal with Australia says that we can't sell any beef to them, but they can sell 20,000 tons a year rent-free, tariff-free to us. The deal that we've got with America is that we have a slightly lower tariff. They had put a slightly lower tariff on our exports to them than we would if we were in the EU. But the reality is that helps us 0.0001% of our economy. It's fuck all, really, compared with the 4% knock that Brexit has caused. And I think that we are teeteringly close, like tantalizingly close, to the point where the government and maybe even some of the mainstream media starts putting the blame for everything that's going wrong in society at the moment on Brexit. And once that happens and we tie Brexit to Nigel Farage, that is his Achilles heel. He can't weasel out of that. He can't say, well, it just wasn't implemented properly, and say, no, you wanted a no-deal Brexit. They gave us the closest we could get to a no-deal Brexit in, possibly. And the things that are causing problems now are the no-deal Brexit shit, okay? The things that we pulled out of the EU. That's what's causing problems now, the stuff that you wanted to pull out of. The fact that we're not part of the single market, the fact that we're not part of the customs union, which other things they lied about going up there. Everyone's saying hello. Yes, Diz. Yes. Should we go over to the papers? Should we go over to the papas, the poopers? Okay, here we go. So first of all, we got the Times here with Jane Goodall there, who has sadly passed away. Go away. There's a fantastic, one of my favourite Far Side cartoons of all time, and I believe that Jane had this framed on her wall, Gary Larson's Far Side, and it was two chimps, and one of them's picking, they pick the back of the other one, and the one saying like, oh, there's a blonde hair here, have you been hanging out with that Jane Goodall tramp? doing research with that Jane Goodall tramp. Anyway, she's passed away at the grand old age of 91, so she's had a good innings. She was responsible for the sort of raising awareness of the plight of chimpanzees in Tanzania and other countries. And along with Diane Fossey, who raised awareness of the gorillas in Rwanda, a really important animal rights campaigner. And she'll be sorely missed. She'll be sorely missed. Okay, so midlife sexual attraction seeker, how to spot one. Okay, that's good. Let's launch J.K. Rowling Day now. Fuck off, Deborah Ross, you fucking turfy twat. And then Britain blows 1 billion turning off turbines during high winds. Energy bill payers spent a record 1 billion this year to switch off wind turbines because of flaws in the UK's drive for net zero. That's not entirely true. That is not, first of all, it's not a billion. Secondly, the problem is that the grid can't take the extra power at the moment, but it will. It will. When there's 1 million batteries on the road plugged in with two-way charging so that you can plug your car in, and then, they need a bit more power in the grid from your car at times when there's not enough power coming in, being able to equalize the power. That's going to be something that we can do in the future, but we have to build the infrastructure to do it. And part of that infrastructure is going to be building new power cables, something that the Tories and Refuck and the Greens, for some reason, take huge objection to. And I do not. I'm like, no, we need this stuff. The planet's more important than the fucking having a nice picture postcard of the Yorkshire Dales or Snowdonia. Yeah, I know that's a bit of a shit thing to say. But the reality is we've got Photoshop now. Take a photo and then just Photoshop out the fucking pylons for now. Okay, can you just do that? Because our children's futures are more important, as far as I'm concerned. Automatic rights for refugees to be scrapped. PM will make asylum seekers earn settled status. So Sir Keir Starmer has pledged to end the golden ticket for asylum seekers by requiring refugees to earn their right to bring family to Britain and scrapping automatic settlement. We could talk about this. This is an interesting discussion. I don't know where my position is on it, because I'd like to maybe talk to Phil about this and maybe talk to you about this. But from what my point of view, I'm like, well, okay, this isn't about not giving someone refugee status. This is about someone who's already got refugee status, but someone who wants to bring their family over. But then there's a part of me that thinks, well, hang on, if they've been given refugee status from the country that they came from, surely their family deserve refugee status at the same time. So yeah, I'll have to think about that a little bit, but generally speaking, my gut instinct is always like, well, if they're a real refugee, we should take them. That's our moral obligation to take people. If we've already said that they are a refugee, well, then their family would be automatically refugees, wouldn't they? If there's one person in the family who are being oppressed and running away from war, surely the whole family is. I don't know. Anyway, here we go. I'm going to come back to this in a moment, but Moan set to lose millions after PPE ruling. Baroness Moan faces legal action to recover £122 million that the government paid for faulty medical equipment supplied by her company, PPE MedPro, that she denied being any part of until she then confessed on the TV. As a company linked to Baroness Moan is told to repay $122 million after selling the government faulty gowns during the pandemic, co-victim families demand strip her of the title. Absolutely. She should not be a baroness. She shouldn't have been made a baroness in the first place. Rachel Reeves was asked about this yesterday, and she said she doesn't have the power. She doesn't have the power to strip her of the title. I'm assuming it's up to the Crown. It's up to Bonnie King Charlie. Okay, Charlie, fucking take it. Take that fucking gong from this criminal motherfucker who defrauded the taxpayers of this country to the tune of 122 million fucking pounds, and then spent a large chunk of that money on a fucking yacht. Just saying. Right. So, on with the ads, I guess. I've never done anything so daring. That's Marina Abramovich on her new epic work. I don't know who that is. A giddy bubble. Stephen Fry in The Importance of Being Earnest, which is always a funny play. One of the things I love about The Importance of Being Earnest by Oscar Wilde is that earnest at the time meant gay. It was like underground code for gay. He's very earnest. So he wrote a play called The Importance of Being Gay. I love the man. What a guy. What a guy. What a pioneer. Anyway, Jane Goodall there, 1934 to 2025. She was a tireless advocate for protection of our natural world. She absolutely was. Another one of the really great people that are no longer with us, while people like Trump and Murdoch still thrive. PPE firm with link to Moan, order to repay 122 million. Golden ticket, asylum rights will end. And then French military board. Sorry, I need to take a drink. Sorry, I've got a frog in my throat. Just give me a moment. French military board's Russian shadow vessel. French military personnel aboard an oil tanker named on a list of Russia's shadow fleet vessels and suspected of being a launch pad for mystery drone flights that forced the closure of airports in Denmark last week. Fucking Russians seeing what they can get away with. Fuck you, Russia. And then we have Nicole Kidman looking ravishing there, as Nicole is seen for the first time since Split. The secrets of her divorce papers are revealed. I don't care. Like, honestly, I think this is a private matter for her and Keith Urban. She married a bloke called Keith. That's fine. She married a bloke called Tom. That's fine. They don't want to be together anymore. That's fine. Whatever. I just don't care. Tell me about your new film that's coming out. Tell me about something exciting that's happening. I just hate the celebrity gossip side of things. It's like, if you've got a new album out, then I might talk about it. But it is a bit of a weird one, isn't it? Like, and maybe if it's a bit of good news, maybe it's someone like getting engaged or someone getting married or something, then okay, cool. I can see why people get excited about it, but sort of delving into the reasons why a relationship broke down and then putting it all over the front pages of the newspaper. If we took a step back for a moment, we'd realise that's a weird thing to do. Imagine your neighbours are getting divorced, right? And then you rifle through their bins and you found out the reason they're getting divorced is X, Y, Z. And then you printed out 800,000 pamphlets detailing why their marriage broke down, and then you distributed it to every WH Smith in the country. Do you not think that would be a bit weird? Do you not think that would be a bit of a strange thing to do? Yeah, because it fucking would be a strange thing to do for the titillation of the twats. Anyway, Baroness Bra told, hand back our 220 million and peerage. There you go. She's under pressure to pay back 122 million that the taxpayer wasted on useless COVID kit. After a crushing defeat in the High Court, there were also demands for the high life-loving lingerie tycoon, the founder of Ultimo Bras, to be booted out of the House of Lords. Oh, pardon me. I've got some form of hiccups. Wow, who will be banished? Go piss off. No, I don't want to see this. Go away. Right, and then we've got that's Wes Streeting looking like an onion. Wes Streeting talks to the Star. Lettuce onion has a ring to it. Labour bigwig Wes Streeting says he'd rather be an onion than a lettuce. What would Keir Starmer be? Rhubarb, maybe. What the fuck? I have no idea what's going on here. Pay back the money, Mr. Moan. And then we've got Class, my stalker terror there, mining Class. And then we've got a picture of the guy from the road, up the road, member of the family. Wills in Gaza aid tribute. That's nice, isn't it? Imagine your neighbour gave a $5 to a charity, and then you printed it onto 8,000 leaflets, and then you passed them out to every train station in the country. Daily Express here, let down by those whose job it was to protect them. Rochdale victims failed woefully as rape gang finally jailed for 174 years. 2 Rochdale grooming gang victims who were let down by those whose job it was to protect them. A judge said. It's about the grooming gangs scandal, in which people who were committing horrific acts of vile sexual violence against minors were effectively shielded by people not wanting to be accused of racism. And one of the reasons why this is so pernicious is that you have people like Nigel Farage who are Tommy Robinson, who capitalize on this kind of horror show. Here's 2 things you need to know. First of all, the number of people who are doing this kind of thing, who are coming from originate or have roots in the Indian subcontinent, is still proportionately smaller than the number of white people doing it. But even so, most of the time, unfortunately, if someone means you harm in this life or does you harm in this life, it is someone that you know. the vast majority of assaults, sexual assaults, murders, everything to go with that is done by somebody who it's carried out by someone who that the victim knew. So this is why this is a bit out there and a bit sensational, because it's so rare. In the same way that if two kids kill a toddler, it's something that happens once every 50 fucking years. Obviously, it'll be a big news story because it doesn't happen very often. A little girl goes missing when a family on holiday in Portugal. It's so rare, thankfully. So that's the good news to know. Violent crime in this country and around the world has been decreasing over the last 20, 25 years. There's a few reasons for that. I think it's mostly to do with lead not being in everything anymore, and also more older people who are part of a generation that seem to think it was a little bit more acceptable to do this kind of thing than we do now, I guess. I don't know. Getting away with it. Life is now remarkably, life in this country is a lot safer than it was. Look at the murder rates. The murder rates in this country are wonderfully low. They're still too high because there shouldn't be any murders. But when you look at the fact that in England and Wales we have about 600 murders a year on average, whereas in America they kill 1,200 people are killed every year, not by murderers, but by the fucking police. By the police. You can see that these stories are so sensational when they come out because they are very rare, thankfully. But this is stories that the Express and the Mail and Farage and Tommy 10 Names use to demonize an entire cohort of society, and we need to guard against that. Now, if the danger of an entire cohort of society being demonized by a minority of crimes being committed, if that wasn't a threat, maybe people would have been reporting it more, knowing that it didn't matter that the people doing this were of Pakistani heritage. Do you know what I mean? Like, maybe some of the people were held back from saying anything because they didn't want the entire Pakistani community to be tarred with the same brush by Nigel Farage and Tommy 10 Names and the Mail and the Express and all these goddamn disgusting chancers and grifters who unfortunately populate they populate the media landscape in a way that they punch above their weight, unfortunately. So anyway, I'll move on now. We will move on to here we go. Anya Taylor-Joy. I met her. I met her a few weeks ago. She was at the Toronto International Film Festival. She said hello. Privately educated, of course. Badenoch, I'll rip up laws on net zero. Conservatives will end targets for electric car uses and scrapping of gas boilers. What the fuck? What the fuck? I mean, this is like the Labour going after trans people. It's not a vote winner. It's just a vote loser. They're not going to win any votes by saying that. They're not. They're just not. If you're that fucking demented that you think that climate change isn't real and something that you don't have to care about, or you're that fucking evil that you think that climate change is a thing that we're doing and you want to accelerate it because you fucking hate your grandchildren and you want them to suffer and die, you're going to be voting for refuck. You know, those votes have already gone, Kemi. They've gone. You're not going to get them back. They're going to vote for the most extreme, right-wing, fascist, gobshite party. And that's not the Tories anymore. That's not the Tories. Paula, thank you very much for the £5 super chat. Being very generous this morning, Paula. Thank you. I think that I also think that you're a lot more likely to be caught now. The time to worry is when stories about violent crimes don't make the papers. Yeah, that's very true, Paula. And it reminds me of a line from one of the Sherlock Holmes stories by Arthur Conan Doyle. It might have been Hound of the Baskervilles, but they're on a train and Watson is traveling on the train with Sherlock, and Sherlock being Sherlock, you know, he's looking out and he's looking out the window, and John Watson says, "Oh, bucolic countryside, isn't it beautiful? Isn't it amazing? Isn't it nice to get out of London and have, away from all the pollution, see all the green and the fields, and it's just such a bonny land, it's beautiful. I love being out in the countryside." To which Sherlock says, "I fucking hate the countryside," and Watson's like, "What the fuck is wrong with you, Holmes?" Holmes is a cantankerous old bastard, and I love him. He's such a great fictional character. But he says, "No, because out here, there's no one, and there's so many crimes that are being committed with no witnesses, no one, and think of all the murders and the burglaries and the buggeries and the this and the that. Think of all the terrible crimes that are being committed out here in the countryside that no one will ever know. At least in the city, there's lots of witnesses because there's lots of people everywhere all at once. It's a lot harder to get away with crimes in a city than it is out here in the countryside. I hate the countryside." I'm paraphrasing, but it says something like that, which is coming back to Paula's point about, the worry is people getting caught. It's a lot harder to get away with stuff now. DNA evidence, with CCTV everywhere, people registering where they are on their mobile phones. Good luck getting away with murder these days. Good luck. You've got murders that are being solved from 20, 30, 40 years ago through DNA samples that have been taken. Hey, we just made an egg from a fucking skin cell, so... yeah, maybe we could bring back the victims back to life and we can ask them who murdered them. Oh, it doesn't work like that. Anyway, it'd be cool if it did. Anyway, point them out from this lineup of people. That one. Bastard. Anyway, so, back to the papers. Where am I going? All right, here we go. What's Anya doing? She's saying Anna Taylor-Joy arrived at the Dior show in Paris. She's only ickle. She's tiny. She's a tiny little... Anyway, refugees must earn right to bring families, says Starmer. So that's the end of the golden passport or whatever they were calling it. Upgrading Trump's flags for brighter shade of MAGA cost $800 a go. American flags flown for Donald Trump's state visit were replaced at a cost to the taxpayer of £50,000 because they were the wrong shade of red. Wow, wow, wee wow. Fucking flags. By the way, if Puerto Rico ever becomes a US state, invest in flags because they're going to have to reprint or recreate, whatever, every single flag in America and the US Virgin Islands and Guam and the Northern Mariana Islands and American Samoa and everywhere else. Every American military base around the world will have to replace their flags. Invest in flags. One word for you, Benjamin. Flags. Anyway, because they have to add an extra star. They'll have 51 stars instead of 50. Scouts. What the fuck? Scouts put no limit on tax on second home. Sorry. Scots put no limit on tax on second home. Second home owners in Scotland could see their council tax bills skyrocket after the MSPs voted to uncap limits to raise tens of millions of pounds. Fucking do it, Scotland. The fact that Buckingham Palace pays $2,000. It's about 2,500, I think it is, in council tax. Tells you everything you need to know. Uncap it, make it a percentage of the worth of the property. Simple as that. Harry drags William into latest court fight. Then we have mystery drone seen over German shipyard, probably a Russian drone. And stop hammering us, food giant tells Reeves. Apparently, stop whacking food companies with taxes. Okay. And then we've got weight loss jabs on NHS for millions, pledges streeting, which, we have our own objection to West streeting. Clearly, I saw him yesterday. I probably could have gone over and talked to him, but I didn't know what to say to him. I just would have... I was like, what the fuck? I wanted to say to him, what the fuck, man? But he was talking to a bunch of people, and I thought, if I just went over and went, what the fuck? I'll probably never get invited back to the bloody conference ever again. But very frustrating. But I had a very good chat with a friend of mine in the government yesterday, and talking about comms. And maybe I'll have to wait and see, but maybe we might... be able to make some inroads on that respect. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do anything about the fact that going after trans people is not a vote winner. I did tell them that. I did tell them. It's just a vote loser. Look at the stats. Trump's peace plan guarantees a future of hatred and war, which is very true, as peace plan is just a war plan. And my golden rules for renovation from Kevin McLeod. What this is he's the presenter of the Channel 4 show Grand Designs, in which these very rich people with like shitloads of money who always become pregnant halfway through want to get a shipping container, a massive oversized shipping container, and put it on the side of a hill, and have one side of the shipping container that's got to be a glass curtain. And you see so many of these shows, and it's always a fucking shipping container with a glass curtain on one side, so they can look out. So they can look out over the bucolic countryside, but everyone on the countryside has to see their shitty fucking garbage shitting container right in the middle of a fucking, on the top of a hill. Look at my shitting container, everyone. Grand Designs, shag designs, more like. The Last Taboo here. I know everything about my friends except what they earn, by Kate Lister. I don't think that's the last taboo, Kate. I don't think that it is. Okay, I'm not sure that is the last taboo. I think there you go. And I had an affair. It was worth it. Life. Why aren't you having an affair? Jesus Christ. And then we've got 2 child benefit cap will be lifted in Reeve's budget. This is great news. So this is news that came out of the Labour Party conference. Probably the only bit of good news as far as I'm concerned. The 2 child benefit cap is going to be lifted. And also together with a promise of action to tackle child poverty. The final decision will be revealed as part of the budget, accompanied by tough decisions over tax rises or welfare refunds to help fund the £3 billion cost, Keir Starmer suggests. Okay, so that is the roundup of the news. Oh, hang on, no, we haven't done FT, have we? Hey, let's do the Metro first. Mylene, there's a story about Mylene Class yesterday, wasn't there, in the Star, about her terrors under her stalker, who was a fucking nutter, who followed her everywhere. D-Day for Diddy, apparently. I don't know what's happening to Diddy today, but I hope he goes to jail for the rest of his life, the miserable bastard. And then as a PPE firm loses court battle, it's all moan. We've been scapegoated, she said, by government, and her husband calls it a travesty of justice. The West Streeting has vowed to get this COVID gown cash back, but MedPro went into administration the day before this was announced. Maybe it was Saturday. They went into administration. Funny that, isn't it? But yeah, she's claiming it was a stitch up. Oh, fuck off. Maybe if your gowns were stitched up correctly, you'll be all right. Then we've got a picture of Moan there, and we've got Prince Harry claims a private investigator hired by a newspaper spied on William, which I think is probably true. Probably true. PM's major U-turn on human rights to stop Farage Boats. Starmer signals shake-up of European Court of Human Rights laws to stop asylum seekers cheating deportation by claiming to be victims of torture, as he blames Brexit and refucks UK leader for spiking channel crossings, which is what we were talking about today. I don't know if this is the best way of going about things. I would much rather they just went after the architects of Brexit, the architects of this insane system that they have set up. I'm going to sorry, I've just got to turn that a little bit. I've got a bit dark in my old age. Right, there you go. Financial Times there, last but not least. Home Office in fresh push for backdoor into Apple user data. Second order seeking access to the cloud. Previous efforts drew backlash from Trump, of all people. VIP Lane, Moan-linked medical group ordered to repay, as we've already heard. Employers shared jobs as government shutdown puts US economy in peril. And then there's a little thing there saying, craze for cuddly toys puts Jellycats on growth spurt. So everyone wants a Jellycat. And then we've got an advert for fucking Google Workspace. Fuck off, Google. Why are you putting an advert during my live stream? We have enough adverts on this. Stop sending me adverts. Whenever I think like adverts to come up, when you're watching a live stream or anything really now. Adverts. This reminds me of that episode of Black Mirror, where you got to get the credits to take part in a talent show or something, and they have adverts that you've got to watch, and if you close your eyes, it says you got to open your eyes. and you cover your ears and it flashes lights. You've got to open, and you have to watch the adverts. Anyway, let's get into your messages. With what time is it now? Oh, good. We've got a little bit over, but that's okay. Me old Staffy Nightmare was more intelligent than usual. You had a Staffy called Nightmare. Okay. Jack Russell says, my Jack Russell is unbelievably intelligent. So Jack Russell has a Jack Russell. This is so confusing. First words would have been, Wesley, you twat. But that probably would have had you removed. Yeah. Shut up, Wesley! In my best Picard impression. Shut up, Wesley. Brighton and Hove says, don't say Farage Boats. Farage will not like it if you say Farage Boats. If you don't say Farage Boats, repeat, do not say Farage Boats. Yeah, he doesn't like it. He doesn't like it. And that's one of the reasons why I think we should be using it, but not lose sight of the fact that this whole thing is caused by Brexit. Nick and Dev says, worrying, isn't it? I know Kefili well. Kefili. I'm not confident they will vote to keep reform out. Yeah. I was talking to Labour MPs yesterday, and more than one of them said that if there was an election tomorrow, they'd lose their seat. Yeah, it's not looking good. They need to get their fucking finger out. They need to sort out their comms. They need to sort out their messaging. They need to make people feel better off, and they need to fucking shout they need to shout from the rooftops their achievements and stop whinging about, like, oh, well, the press hate us. Yeah, the press are always going to hate you, mate. Fucking regulate the press then, Leveson too. Brexit Boats sounds like a much better, good alliteration, but do the gammon still link Brexit with Farage? Yes, Sid, I think they should. I think that we should always talk about Farage's broken Brexit Britain. Always mention him in the same breath as the Brexit that he wanted, that was delivered by his busy mate Boris, that, turned out to be as shit as the people who told us not to leave the EU, like myself, told us it was going to be. I did have an idea to use a phone cam to ensure you're watching the ads. Easy to do, but then figured out that would annoy the hell out of me. Yeah, please don't give them ideas, Martin. Don't give them ideas. One of you says, I'm terrified of cassowaries, though. I met a nice cassowary once in Madang in Papua New Guinea. A friendly cassowary. They are terrifying. They are absolute dinosaurs. Well, of course, they're dinosaurs. Avian dinosaur. 15 million merits. That was the name of the episode. B. It always reminds me of that. You can't skip it. Unskippable ads. I'm like, this is like Black fucking Mirror, this. And there you go. Vendetta says, I always call it Putin's Brexit. Seems the thickos can't link Putin, Brexit, and Farage. Yeah. Well, they did mention Farage's Russia ties at the conference, and they also, he said just before the conference started that the policy of ending indefinite leave to remain was racist, which it is. Yeah, and all the newspapers were like, oh, they're calling us all racist now, which they weren't. I live in Caerphilly. The only challenge to refuck will be plaid. Well, then, vote plaid then. Just keep them out. Just keep them out. Just keep them out. How do you steal cheese from a Welshman? Caerphilly. Why did the Mexican take your cheese? Because it was nacho cheese. Okay. What did the cheese say to itself in the mirror? Hello, me. Right, cheese jokes have got to stop now. I honestly have a fucking vast repertoire of shit cheese jokes, and I don't want to keep you. Okay, so I'm gonna fuck off. I'm gonna get going. Got shit to do. The sun is shining. It's probably the last day of sun I'm gonna have in a while. So I've got a lot to do. Obviously, I've got to continue updating or everything because I was away for a month, like an idiot. I will try to do something tonight. I don't know if I'm going to be doing a pre-record for the Sunday roast with Alex. If I do, I'll let you know about that, and that'll be going live at 10:45 or something, or 9:45 on Sunday. So look out for that. If I am on it this week, I'm not sure if I am. But otherwise, I'll try and do something tonight for you. We might be trying something new. I'm going to be working on that today, but no guarantees, okay? Because I I still need to get unpacked. Like my bag's over there open with all my stuff in it, all my clothes that need washing. So and my other hat. I'll let me get my shit together. Let me get all my shit together. Put it in a backpack. Oh no, take it out of my backpack, and I will be back definitely 100% on the knocker at around 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. As soon as I get my shit together. And also, we've got the agenda to look forward to with Phil. We did the agenda live earlier this week, which I think went down really, really well. It was really nice meeting C Dizzy Dizzle and other people whose names you see in the chat quite often. And it was nice meeting you in real life. And I really want to do that kind of thing more. I really do. I wish if I was in Liverpool, I'll do it once a month. We'll have a talk at the Ship and Mitre. You know, we were just upstairs, Ship and Mitre, real ale pub, come along, 30 people. It's just great. Fucking great. I'll be up for that. But I don't. I live in Durham and hardly anyone else does. It's just me and Dominic Cummings and Ben Chambers. But yeah, so might do something tonight, but yeah, definitely tomorrow. We've got Morning Brew at 9. We've got the agenda at 1 o'clock, and then at 9:30 in the evening, we've got the Friday Night Social. We're back on the old schedule. So please join us for all those things. Hit the like button on the way out. Thank you for watching. Thanks for all the comments. Thanks for the super chats. And until next time, I'll say hello, good evening, welcome, and goodbye.